So today we're going to study Isaiah 2. I've invited my good friend here, Shon Hopkin. We both served in the Jerusalem branch together. So Sean received a bachelor's degree and a master's degree from Brigham Young University in the Near Eastern Studies with a focus on the Hebrew Bible. He received a PhD from the University of Texas at Austin in Hebrew Studies with a focus on medieval Hebrew, Arabic, and Spanish literature. So he's written also a few books, co-authored one, for example, one that we're going to be using a little bit today is this opening Isaiah that he wrote with Ann Madsen.
John, it is good to be with you. Back when we were together, as you'll recall, we talked quite a bit about Isaiah, and I think that led to our discussion today,
Yeah,
very naturally.
it was because of Isaiah that we ended up moving to Jerusalem. I got really interested in learning about Isaiah, so I decided to start learning Hebrew, and in the process, ended up living 5 years in Jerusalem and teaching physics at the Hebrew University. So let's start off here. The word of the Lord that Isaiah the son of Amos saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. And Hadavar Asher Chaza Yeshayahu ben Amotz al Yehuda veYerushalayim.
Well, okay, so one of the words that is well, maybe there's two words we better tinker with, play with, and talk about here, although there may be some other place we can go. One is that very first word for those who are looking at this, of course, working right from left, hadavar. There's a fascinating word, and then chazah, the verb, is another fascinating word. But let's start with hadavar. Which is word in English, but that just doesn't quite do it. It feels so static, like an inert thing, like a noun or something that just sits there. And if you are, particularly if you're connecting Devar with Chazah, where he's visioning or he's seeing something, but it's not just sight, it's having a vision. So this word is more active. It's something that God speaks and sends as an active thing to change reality, to both announce reality and to impact it, to create. Because as we'll remember, God creates with the word in the beginning. It's got a creative power. God sends it to influence. And so when God speaks, it doesn't just sit there. It's alive, it's powerful, it has a performative kind of an attribute to it.
When we first come across this verse, we might have the perspective that Isaiah is getting a text message in the sky from the Lord. But as you come to understand what Devar means, as you pointed out so eloquently, it's a very rich word. In fact, in the Old Testament, it appears 1,439 times. 800 of those times, or I think 801 of those times, it's translated as word. The other 600 plus are translated as thing, matter, acts, chronicles, sayings, commandments. Strong's Concordance has a really long list of definitions for davar. What you said reminded me of the phrase in Scripture, "For the word of God is quick and powerful." It's quick, it's alive, it's powerful, it's transformative, as you so beautifully stated. The most transformative event in my life was the day I decided to read the scriptures every day. It transformed every aspect of my life, how I feel, my attitudes, my commitment, my relationships to others and to God. I am so grateful for the Word of God. It also reminds me a little bit of what happened to Lehi. I love this when he receives the book in First Nephi chapter 1 and he reads it and he's reading these words. And what does he exclaim? "Great and marvelous are thy works, O Lord God Almighty." And I love the coupling between the words that he's reading and the works that he's feeling. And it's something that just overwhelms his soul. If we return back to Isaiah one now, we can look at it in a different view. My view is that Isaiah is visioning the words, the things, the acts, the might, the majesty, and the power, the dominions of God.
Another a related word is devere, which is what we take as oracle. We understand it as an oracle or a prophecy from God, and it's connected to the Holy of Holies often. Yeah, it creates reality. It changes reality.
More thoughts on chazah. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? You kind of mentioned there that it means more than just to see, it means to vision. Did you want to say anything more about that?
Well, I'd love to hear your thoughts. There are, of course, lots of different words in Hebrew for both seeing things and for the prophetic act. So I'd love any insights you'd like to share on that, John, if you're.
Several years ago, I was reading some commentary about chazah, and they said that there are 10 forms of seeing in Hebrew. Now, I think we should probably take that with a grain of salt because I'm sure that's subject to a little bit of nuance. But I want to focus on three that are really important, especially in the Old Testament here. And one that's not quite related to our discussion, but I think is really important. And that's he beat. He beat means to look attentively or towards something. As I see it, it's where you direct your focus or your gaze. It's used when the children of Israel need to look to the bronze serpent for healing. And they needed to direct their gaze, their focus towards that bronze serpent. And it being a type of Jesus Christ, we need to direct our gaze, our focus to Christ. Now let's talk about ra'ah and chazah. Ra'ah means to see with one's eyes, and chazah means to vision. I love Isaiah 30, verse 10. This is where Isaiah is lamenting the perspective that the people have towards the prophets and seers in Israel. He says, which say to the seers, see not, and to the prophets, prophesy not. I like the translation, which say to the seers, see not, and to the visionaries, vision not. To see, ra'ah, to vision, chazah. But the crown jewel for me for ra'ah is Isaiah 6, his prophetic call to the ministry, his throne theophany, where he sees God sitting upon his throne. Ere et Adonai Yoshev al kiseh. I saw with my eyes the Lord sitting upon his throne. Isaiah sees the Lord with his eyes. This is an important concept for the entire Judeo-Christian world.
I was teaching a Book of Mormon class for those who aren't members of the church at BYU. And one of my students was a recent convert. So I had a couple in there who had just been baptized and hadn't really experienced the Book of Mormon at all much. And she said, my boyfriend is determined it is impossible to see God. He says, you guys are crazy. You can't see God. Joseph Smith can't have seen God. And he used a variety of New Testament verses that, we're probably familiar with. Um, to talk about that. And, it always strikes me as fascinating when we've just covered something. We had just covered Second Nephi 16, which is Isaiah seeing God. And I said, well, I mean, I understand where that's coming from. And here's sort of the background of that. And he's not crazy to interpret the scriptures that way. Others do as well. What do we do with Isaiah 6? Isaiah sees God, and it really, this is such a Latter-day Saint way of understanding the relationship between God and humankind. Those who seek after him do both see Ra'ah and Chazah. They envision or have visions of God where they are introduced into God's presence, spiritually, physically, in a variety of ways according to God's needs. So, come to
Right.
pass in the last days, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountain, shall be exalted above the hills. All nations shall flow into it. Oh, what a great verse this is. We could stay here for an hour. Well, I'm going to jump right to this idea of a river flowing that we don't see. I mean, it's there in the King James Version translation, but it just doesn't leap out in the same way that it does in the Hebrew, which is naharu. So the word for river in Hebrew is nahar, and then this is a verb form of that, right? So it's like a river flowing, and of course, the miraculous thing is that this river is flowing up a mountain against gravity in the last days. And you start right here, and it's going to play through the rest of the chapter. Pride is going to be brought down. The holiness and the things of God that are so often disregarded and, as in Isaiah 53, stepped on and despised, will be lifted up miraculously. And if I could just briefly mention a time when this had some very real residents in my life. We were raising teenagers in Provo or in Orem, and we were trying to convince them to go do early morning baptisms for the dead. And we're driving, at 4:30, 5 a.m. to try to get there just as the temple is opening. And it's everybody's asleep, and nobody really rewards you for going and doing temple service. Your bishop, I mean, he might be there, but he's probably not there. There's no point system. People aren't giving you a gold star. The people in the temple are really nice to you, but we gave them McDonald's afterwards. That was about the best they had. But as we got close to the temple, and people just aren't awake at that time. And then, by the way, then when I tell my friends of other faiths, and we don't drink coffee, they're like, "Whoa, this is unheard of." Um,
Yeah.
Lights start to converge on the temple, car lights, and it's like against the gravity of sleep, of human need, of human behavior, people are converging on a temple of God. And we went into that temple the first time we did this, and you go down into the lower floor, into the basement where the baptistry is, and it's full of young people. A river flowing miraculously upstream is exactly what this looked like to me. Shocking to see teenagers filling a temple at 5 a.m. to serve people who had passed away, to serve the Lord, really.
Coming back from a perspective of physics, water doesn't flow uphill, right? Unless there is some force behind it.
Yeah.
And I think this is showing God's power and direction in these latter days. I really love the idea that it was Naharu, right? That it was a river. For example, we say Nahar Frat, which means the river Euphrates. It's a mighty river, as opposed to Nahal, right? Which is like a stream, or a
Yeah.
peleg, which is usually meant to divide water for like irrigation. This is actually a very big current. And the thing that I really like about it is even going to Israel is considered aliyah. You're going upward. There's this ascension, right? It's so prevalent in temple worship in ancient Israel that you're ascending, you're going upward, right? And that you start in the mikvot down below then you ascend the hill, then you go up the steps.
Yeah, the idea of a divine ascent, and we'll come in an upcoming verse very quickly to the idea of a way or a path. Mount of Olives is actually elevation-wise higher than the Holy Mount there in Jerusalem. You can look down on it, but no, it's not. It's not higher. You are gonna ascend, and you go down into the Kidron Valley, and then there, as some of you know, on the southern steps that have been excavated of the ancient Temple Mount, there are these beautiful stairs, asymmetrical stairs that sort of follow the course of the rise up the mountain, whether that was done just to follow the natural rise or whether it was done purposely to make you think about, I am going up. I'm seeking to ascend into the presence of the Lord. And I love what you've done. Up out of the mikveh and then up those steps, up through the Hulda gates and then onto the mount. So
Yeah.
beautiful.
There's another one that I really like, Rosh Hacharim. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so the chief or the head, the top of the mountains. And so you think of this. the very summit, and mountains, I think for Latter-day Saints and for others have been this place where often God has met his prophets or those that he's calling up into his presence. So it's a liminal space. It's not in heaven. It's not down on the earth. It's this between space, but it's the very top of that between space. And certainly Jerusalem, the holy city, and then of course the temple, and then you ascend into the high priest one day a year ascends into the Holy of Holies, right? And this upward, 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 up into the presence of God. So highest is one thing to do with it, but then chief or most important is the Rosh, the head, is another thing that could be seen with that construction there.
I really like how you described liminal space, space between us and the heavens, this sort of in between place where earth and heaven is coupled, and that is a beautiful description for me of the house of the Lord. As you point out, there are many meanings for Rosh, beginning, head, top, chief, leader. I want to consider basically two of those. In verse 2, there's an interesting word here, nachon, which has a root of kun. It is translated as establish. It can also mean like to fix, to set up, to direct, to secure, to order, to establish. In this verse, it has a passive tone to it, right? This house of the Lord shall be established. I want to change it to an active voice that the Lord is directing this work. The Lord establishes, sets, directs, orders his house to be spiritual summits, these Rosh Hasharim, right? These liminal spaces. The Lord is directing, he's setting these houses, his house to be our spiritual summits, our tops of the mountains. I want to change gears for a minute now and talk about Rosh as being the head or the chief. There's a famous Jewish medieval rabbi named Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki who did a lot of commentary. He gives a definition of the top of the mountains here. He says, on a mountain that is the head of all the mountains in the importance of the mountains. For me, this really conjures up the images of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. It's really hard to overstate the importance of the Temple Mount in Jewish culture and orthodoxy.
Western Wall right there by the mount, the closest you can get. And for those who are sort of interested, who try to follow some of the directions of the Orthodox rabbinate and don't go up onto the Holy Mount because they're like, well, we don't know where the Holy of Holies is. We don't want to risk stepping in there without authority to do so, is one of the ideas there. But the emotion, the passion that you see exhibited with prayers there at the Western Wall, which is just it's the wall of the mount, the structure that holds up the platform that the temple used to be on. It's beautiful to watch.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Okay, so let's go to the next one. So Isaiah 2, verse 3. And many people shall go and say, come ye and let us go up to the mount of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Thoughts?
Oh boy. Well, I'll sort of head someplace that a pre-conversation you and I had is going to lead me there. So I hope I'm not stealing any of your thunder that of
I'll
something
go
you wanted to talk about.
steal
But
my thunder.
good. The second half of this verse, he will teach us of his ways, we will walk in his paths. And as Isaiah often does, he's working from the general to the particular here. And there's something fascinating. First of all, you have very clearly a way. Early on, there's some evidence that Christianity was known as the way. I find it fascinating that Nephi in 2 Nephi 31 talks about this is the way. And Hebrews in New Testament does that as well. And then Nephi sort of walks you through this idea. And I really believe, I've written an article on it, so it must be true, but I really believe he's envisioning this divine ascent through the ancient temple. As he says, you've got to be baptized. Not that they were doing baptisms in the brazen laver of water, but that he's using that symbolism. And then you've repented, altar sacrifice, you've been baptized, then you're through the door, you're in the gate, and then the Holy Ghost will show you the way, and you have to feast upon the word, and you've got the table of showbread, and you have to learn to speak the tongue of angels, and you've got angels stitched on the veil there. And God isn't going to reveal any more to you until he appears unto you in the flesh. And then, I mean, that fits so well with Isaiah's experience there in Isaiah chapter 6, right? It's his divine commission from the Lord in a holy of holies kind of setting. Well, anyway, so this idea of divine ascent into the presence of the Lord is here, and that there is a path, or excuse me, a way that we all walk in, but that then also on that sort of, you might call it a broad path. It's actually a narrow, a straight path. It's you have to, but there's a path in the way. There's our individual path, and it has to be lit by the Lord, and it will, if we walk in it, it will be lit by the Lord. And it's not ours, it's the path that the Lord, the specific path that's for me. And you've got a specific path on the way that is for you, and God will guide us on that path.
I really loved the bringing of the temple symbolism into that. I'm glad we recorded this. I want to listen to that again.
There's some fun things here.
That's really nice.
And then
Yeah,
the Archotav is his paths. So you might call the Derech or Drachav his ways. That's like the map. The Archotav is the journey. It's what you actually walk in, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
it really is beautiful.
Any other thoughts that you wanted to share on that verse?
Well, goodness, John, once again, we may be better
Move on to the
continue
next
on
one.
unless you've got something else you want to do.
So much interesting stuff there, but I think you're probably right. Let's
Wait,
move on.
let's just mention we paused too long. Now you gave me a chance to think to say something else.
Awesome.
But I'll be brief. The law, and then here's this, the word of Adonai, the word of the Lord. Again, this idea that this is something of real power. As a Latter-day Saint might hear this as his revelation or his inspiration directly to you. And the law, the Torah, is not like these are things that I'm telling you you have to do, although yes, but it's the guide into healthy living. This is how you live a healthy life. This is the map once again. And so you can see potentially that general to the specific. Here's the map of how you live a holy and healthy life. Now let me give you the word, this active thing that will change your life, that will change your ability to walk correctly, that will give you light and insight into what to do.
And since we paused, I'm going to say one other word, which is na'ale, which is
Hmm.
where it says, let us go up. That is the future tense of let us ascend, or we will ascend. I really love, and I like the idea of translating it as we will go up, and as opposed to let us go up, which sounds like a proposition, as opposed to here's what we're going to do. We're going to ascend to the mountain of the Lord.
This sense of covenantal commitment. We will do this. We choose to do this, and we commit to do it.
Yes, wonderful. And he shall judge among the nations and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up the sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore.
I want to mention this verb hochiach, to rebuke. Um, so this is not rebuke like you're in the principal's office and you're in trouble because you've done something wrong. This is to teach, to discern. So think of it as a courtroom where the judge is discerning what is right through and think of sort of a war setting. And it's very hard to tell for those who are trying to pay attention and aren't just caught up in, that I'm right and they're wrong. But for those who are really trying to discern, it's very challenging. What's the right way forward? Where is justice? Where is that which will lead to peace? Then this is a judge, a shofet, who is going to shafat, who's going to judge, and he's going to proclaim and teach and discern that which will then bring peace into the world. So he's not punishing per se, he's correcting, he's chastising, he's rebuking, but he's creating a scenario in which peace can flow for all peoples who are willing to accept his teachings, his word, his creative word that he's going to discern and give. And
In modern terminology, lehokiach means to prove something
hmm,
and to show that it's right. And I think that's basically what the Lord's saying. Look, I'm going to show you a better way. I'm going to show you how to make peace.
he's setting things right. It's providing clarity and then clarity that leads to resolution. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. He was the peacemaker. And it's, something that our prophets have really emphasized. I think that was really neat what President Oaks talked about. It felt like almost President Nelson part two on being peacemakers. And that was a really powerful thing, especially, given the light of the current situation.
Let me just add,
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
come to verse 5. Let me just say, and this is, others have seen this many times before, but the beauty of taking weapons of war, weapons that had destroyed and torn down, and then you don't throw them away, you transform them into tools of agriculture, tools to make peace, tools to build and grow. And we have so much. Sometimes the creative abilities of humankind has been harnessed in destructive uh, tendencies, but it's creative, actually. And to harness that creative ability and not to say, oh, I can't be creative anymore, but that can be transformed by a living God who provides clarity and resolution.
Do you want to do verse 5? You want to
Sure.
read that?
O house of Jacob, come ye and let us walk in the light of the Lord.
So obviously, the Book of Mormon adds an important phrase here.
Hmm.
How does that verse change for you so let me just read that.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
going to actually read from your book here. Um, O house of Jacob, come ye, let us walk in the light of the Lord. Yea, come, for ye have all gone astray, every one to his wicked ways. So that is the JST of the Isaiah.
Really fascinating because it shifts this sort of conclusion, you might say, of the first four verses now are coming to conclusion. Let us walk in the light of the Lord, and now it's going to turn towards the way that Judah and Jerusalem haven't been walking in the way of the Lord. It's going to turn to ways of wickedness. And so what it does is very beautifully, in a very ancient literary kind of a way, it creates a parallelism that says this is how we ascend by walking in the light of the Lord. But then in antithetical parallelism, it's giving the opposite, but you are walking in your wicked ways. And then as Isaiah is so good at doing, it sort of launches the negative assessment of what they've been doing. So I find it very powerful that the Book of Mormon is highlighting something here, and in this ancient text illuminated in the Book of Mormon is. I don't know if we want to call it more complete than what we have in the King James Version. It's certainly doing some powerful things that feel very ancient.
And this is a really beautiful transition, as you're pointing out, this antithetic parallelism of, going from here's what we want to do, here's what we will do, but here's where we've been. Uh,
Really interesting. You have the problem and then you have the solution. And you say, well, the problem is stated second and the solution is stated first. Come ye, let us walk in the light of the Lord, because we've all gone in our wicked ways. And yet it's perfect literarily to the first phrase fits with what's come in verses one through five. And then the second half, even though the problem is stated after the solution, this is exactly what Isaiah 2 is doing, right? It's really fascinating. moment here in the Book of Mormon text.
Would you like to read those three verses there?
Yep, yep, absolutely.
Mm.
Therefore, thou hast forsaken thy people, the house of Jacob, because they be replenished from the east and are soothsayers like the Philistines. They please themselves in the children of strangers. Their land is also full of silver and gold. Neither is there any end of their treasures. Their land is also full of horses. Neither is there any end of their chariots. Their land is also full of idols. They worship the work of their own hands, that which their own fingers have made.
So I can tell by your emphasis some of the things that you're interested in.
Yeah, so this word Malay, right, is to be full. Malau is to be full or filled or to overflow. The idea seems to be not just that they have dabbled in these foreign cultures, but they have become saturated in these foreign practices, and it's sort of fun. You've got the East, so this would be like the sort of high-end academic's the wrong word, but sort of wisdom from the East, even as a modern sense of things, at least for Americans. There's this brilliant wisdom that's actually, but from the East, Kedem, but it's also Mikedem, it's ancient wisdom, but we might say, reading Isaiah here, superstitious wisdom that it seems like the coolest new thing. This is what the cool people are doing. But then the Philistines, this is the close and very earthy enemy. Like you're listening to the Philistines who are your enemies, and they're the ones that they're not even sort of the cool ones. They're crass, you might say. I don't know that the ancient Philistines were, but this is how they would have been viewed by ancient Israel. And then the children of strangers, you've got then this global sense of things. So you've got East, you've got West, the Philistines, and then you've got this global influence. And you're saturated with things in a way that does not allow God's glory to fill you.
Well, I see we're getting close to our expiration time. Is there anything that you wanted to share in the last few verses that we
Okay. Will you
of
go
chapter?
back one screen for me? And I'll just say something general, and then there's a specific thing I want to show with verse 11 that I think is really fun, but maybe helpful. So first of all, I want to show just how beautiful and powerful what Isaiah is doing here is that we've begun with images of being lifted up, that which is humble being exalted. You're the divine ascent in God's ways, and there's this permanence. It's going to be exalted. It's going to be established. And then when we exalt ourselves in our own ways, just how impermanent, and that's the way the chapter is going to end, cease from these impermanent human beings. And so you have all of these images of highness or pride, being humbled or pulled down and brought low.
And if I could just say one last thing, maybe a summary statement for how I view this chapter. Let's go back to verse 6. I'm going to draw on another comment that Rashi made. He says the prophet addresses the Shekhinah and says, "For until now you have forsaken your people because of their iniquity." In rabbinic literature, the Shekhinah is the divine presence. It comes from the root shachan, which means to nest, to dwell, or to tabernacle. The rabbinic tradition points to Ezekiel as the time when the divine presence left the children of Israel because of their iniquities. That's a very serious consequence for their transgressions. The divine presence left them. Now, this shouldn't necessarily be so foreign to us because in section 97 of the Doctrine and Covenants, the Lord, speaking in regard to his temple, says, My presence shall be there, for I will come into it, and all the pure in heart that shall come into it shall see God. This divine presence is the Lord. I will be in my temples. And I want to go now to the second part here in verse 22. So if we could turn there. In verse 22, it says, cease ye from man whose breath is in his nostrils. But if you were to look at this, the first four words there, it says, cease ye from man, chidlu lechem min ha'adam. Cease ye from Adam. That's kind of funny. Why Adam? Well, Adam appears more than 500 times in the Old Testament. Most of the time, it's translated as man or mankind or men or stuff like that. Only 13 times does it actually refer to Adam, the individual. But why Adam? Well, if you construct Adam, it's taken from three parts: Dam, blood; Adamah, ground; and Adom, red. This mishmash of the elements of the earth are brought together by the God of the earth, and whose spirit is who breathes into him the breath of life, and yet we're taking counsel from him. We should be turning our thoughts, we should be turning away from the natural man and turning our hearts to God, flowing up to him in his divine presence in the temples to be with him.
John, just share a phrase that I learned somewhere. I don't know who I learned it from. It is that there is a hole in our soul, and that hole is Christ-shaped, or for non-Christian, God-shaped, And we want to fill, we all have this sense of divine lack of need, that we're insufficient, we're afraid that we don't matter, or that we're not good enough. And so we try to fill that fear with things that will prove to us that we have value. But the things that we tend to fill it with are so they fill up that space and don't allow God, which will is the only being who can fill that space perfectly. And the other things aren't necessarily bad as long as the Lord is at the center. He is the constant one. He is the one who provides breath. He's the one that doesn't change. The things that I do are gonna shift on me so rapidly from day to day. Sometimes I don't know how I'm gonna feel. I go to bed feeling one way. I wake up the next morning feeling like I'm a different human being. But God doesn't. God doesn't. He is that which fills our divine lack, our sense of need, and we don't have to uh, hide in sleep or in substances. We don't have to dull our senses so that we're not afraid anymore. We can go to the one who gives life and constancy. And I think this is what Isaiah is so beautifully, so powerfully doing. And I loved what you just did, John. And you made me think of that I wanted to add on here at the end.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you so much. Well, this has been a real treat for me. Thank you. I've really appreciated it.
Me
And it's,
too. Me too. What a fun dialogue partner. This is fun to do this together.
thank you.